We're starting now. Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending our session today. My name is Cliff Simon, and I am happy to present Military Affiliated Student Orientation, which is going to be our talk for the next hour. This session will include a presentation and some times for questions at the end. So feel free to utilize the Q&A box at the right-hand side of your screen to submit questions throughout your presentation. Please remember that this session is supplemental to your required orientation online module, and the link to your required orientation has been sent to your Brockport email, so be sure to check that out. At the conclusion of this session, please feel free to complete our feedback form and let us know about your experience. We'll go ahead and get started with our session with introductions from our presenter.
How's it going, everyone? Thanks for joining me today. My name is Brandon Nunnery. I'm the Veterans Admissions Specialist at SUNY Brockport. I know I've probably spoken with many of you either in person, over the phone, text message, email, etc. in the past. If we haven't had the chance to meet before, it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. As Cliff said, we're going to talk about pretty much all things veteran and military related today. Certainly, this is designed to be an overview of some of the big aspects that will impact most your academic success at SUNY Brockport, but by no means is it going to cover every aspect that you might want to look out for, but I'll certainly give you some indicators moving forward on what to look out for in those regards as well. As you can tell, I'm joining you from home today, so I do apologize in advance if there are any of the interruptions that come with being from home. So please forgive me for those. But just to give you an overview of what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk quite a bit about education benefits, but notwithstanding, we're also going to talk quite a bit about non-education benefits as well, services and supports. If you're planning on participating in an ROTC or NROTC program or currently on active duty, and if you're also going to be in a drill status when you're attending Brockport. So those are all some of the big elements that are going to impact each of our students with military obligations, either past, present, or future, in different ways throughout their academic career. So with regards to some of the non-education benefits, these are something that you definitely want to take a look for. And unfortunately, there is no one-stop shop that will cover every and all veteran or military related benefits at every level. As you can see, it's pretty disparate based on how a veteran is defined, or if you're still in the military, if you're a spouse or a dependent, if you are using VA healthcare services, which are at the federal level, if you're utilizing state or county-based agencies, or even just local agencies like non-for-profits or the college you're attending. So some of the big aspects to keep in mind are making sure you cover the basics, like housing, financial security, healthcare, childcare in many cases. So these can be pretty critical to your student success, even though they don't have anything directly to do with your classwork at Brockport. So be aware that there are VA transition services and other VA services that Brockport can help connect you with that will integrate you into the VA healthcare system, integrate you into a lot of the supports, services, and programs that the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs will host. Additionally, in New York State, we have a county veteran service agency in every county, regardless of where you live. In many cases, it might just be one person that kind of runs that often, or if you live in the county of Monroe, it's a pretty expansive county agency with a lot of staff members and a lot of support for veterans. They will handle a lot of the local-based programs, for example, state property tax exemptions, applications for both state and federal benefit programs, employment agency benefits, as well as unemployment benefits if you're recently separated from the military. With local, there's quite a lot to take advantage of. Obviously, a lot of nonprofit organizations like the American Legion, VFW, AMVETS, IAVA. Many of those peer-to-peer type organizations are a really great thing to get engaged with if you have the time and inclination to want to expand on community service or expand your network of veterans and military personnel in your community. Keep in mind that in the year 2020, we're not in the culture of 1945 anymore. So the majority of the people you're going to meet in your community, and including on a college campus, will not have any concept of what military service is or that experience has imbued in you. So you're going to have to be an advocate for yourself more so than past generations of how that has affected you, some pros and cons within that, and both be a teacher as well as a learner in regards to your military experiences. Regarding academic success on the college campus, we have obviously our Academic Success Center, which is good to say, a one-stop shop for a lot of your academic needs that are really the focus of your time at Brockport. So going to class, doing your work, learning and engaging for what comes next is really the whole reason why we're moving forward with what you're doing next. They do offer free tutoring services as well. And that's typically in any subject that you could request. Make sure you follow up with them, especially during the semester early on. If you have a desire or find that there's a need for that, I can personally attest to the fact that in many cases, that can make the difference between an A and a B, which can be great if your GPA is important to you, and hopefully it always should be, but also between passing and failing. And we certainly want to make sure that we're providing the best academic support based on your particular needs that will help you engage towards that graduation stage, which is what we're seeking. If you are thinking about living on campus, you do have that option. As military or veterans personnel, regardless of if you're coming in as a transfer student or a first-time student just coming from basic and AIT, you have the option to live on or off campus. If you do decide to live on campus, however, we also have a yellow ribbon living learning community, which is a great point of engagement for those students with military experience or in a military background, such as our children and spouses of dependents that are interested in living on campus. So you have a culture of people who are already familiar with that type of learned experience and shared experience in the past. If you have served or are continuing to serve and you have completed college credits, which these days almost everyone has, know it or not, from their military service, even merely basic training can give you some invaluable credit towards your degree completion. So if you've served in the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, or Coast Guard, those transcripts are facilitated through the Joint Service Transcript System. And a really simple way to find that is just Google Joint Service Transcripts. It'll take you to a Department of Defense website. They are free to request, and we receive them electronically overnight. Usually as long as you request those by at least 11 p.m. Central Time, we'll get those the following business day. So we will evaluate those for credit. Brockport treats all credit from any military source as taken at a four-year school. So if you've already kind of maxed out the value of community college credits, for example, and then you also have your military credit, you'll get the full academic value of both your prior education and your military training. With the Air Force, if you've served in the Air Force, they do have their own program to request through, and that's just through the Community College of the Air Force or Air University. And there's a link right here and also online on how to request CCAF transcripts. If you've also done additional PME training through the military, maybe you did Dante's or Defense Language Institute or attended a war college, service academy, they may have additional transcript requirements that won't show up on a CCAF or a JST, for example. So be sure to follow up with all those different elements. They can be a little tedious in some cases to request, but they are well worth the few minutes of your time that it'll take to save you potentially semesters or even years off of your education. In terms of health and wellness, we do partner with multiple VA facilities in the local area, including Buffalo, Canandaigua, Syracuse, and those in Rochester. We also have sponsored in the past VA social worker visits on campus, and they can be great advocates to introduce you to all the benefits and services that are provided for through the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs in a one-on-one fashion. That's especially popular for our disabled veterans, whether you are currently rated with a disability rating through the VA or seeking one. They can give you a really great rundown of what programs and services can help you, but you certainly don't have to be a disabled veteran to take advantage of those. One of the pretty low-hanging fruits that you can take advantage of from your military service as well is we have waiver of immunization records based on the receipt of a DD-214 or current military orders. So if you have a recent DD-214, if you're in the Guard or Reserves, even if your period of service is not yet concluded, if you have separated or retired from the military, send us a DD-214. Member 4 is what we're typically looking for. And that way we can send that to the health center. They will waive your immunization requirements, but you're more than welcome to submit your medical records to them if you so choose. And it'll also cover a parking discount, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. We do have multiple on-campus exercise facilities. So those are actually included in your student fees, and we'll talk about that kind of thing a little bit later on. But with those, just be aware that there's a lot of non-educational or non-academic resources on Brockport's campus as well. One thing that's important to note is not to label yourself only as one thing. So for example, it's very easy for you to identify as a veteran or a military service member or the dependent, but that's not the only thing that defines you. You are also a college student. You also have particular passions and hobbies that you like to engage in that might be different from someone else. So don't hesitate to take advantage of all the opportunities, whether it's within or without the military scope of how college has to offer. So if you want to play a college sport or join a club team or intramural sports or join a student organization, take full advantage of that. Look for leadership opportunities, look for community service opportunities, look for mentorship opportunities, whether you're mentoring someone else or you can learn from someone else as well. When it comes to Office for Accessibility Services, if you have any learning accommodations that you need, be they physical, mental, emotional, learning impairments, this is a great way for you to be on a level playing field with any other student when it comes to degree completion. And those can be found right in the ASC as well. So you have a kind of a one-stop shop, which is nice in that regard. We also have a Hazen Health Center on campus. They do actually have VA approved health counseling services, and some of their counselors have been approved by the Department of Veterans Affairs. If you would like to take advantage of that opportunity, you can do so in a capacity right on campus. When it comes to work-life balances, as we talked about briefly, there is a discounted parking on campus if you have served in the U.S. Armed Forces basically from 1990 forward. With that, as long as you're the veteran or the service member, it doesn't unfortunately apply to dependents or spouses, just to the service member or veteran themselves, but it will knock your parking rate from what is usually around $145 per year for an on-campus resident or roughly $123 per year for a non-veteran down to about $23 a year. So it saves you about $100, which is a nice little perk, and you only have to purchase those passes once a year. We do have a Brockport Child Development Center, which can handle a lot of daycare needs. If you have children or are planning on having children during your time at Brockport, they have a separate website that is adjacent to Brockport. So make sure you check them out if that's something that would suit your needs in attending college. For our female veterans, we have a Women's Center as well. So take full advantage of the services and the advocacy they can provide on multiple different levels. We have on-campus employment opportunities, including VA work study. So if you are using any federal GI Bill benefit, which we'll talk about extensively in a minute, you can actually take a look at working in our Veterans Affairs office or even off campus in an approved VA facility, whether it's a national cemetery, a Veterans Health Administration, or a Veterans Benefit Administration capacity. You can get pretty nice little paycheck while you're doing that. And it's only available to you while you're using a VA education benefit specifically. The Office of Career Services can also be a great resource both while you're on campus to help seek out internship opportunities, to seek out on-campus employment, off-campus employment, but especially come closer to graduation when you're getting serious about that next step, be it moving on to graduate school or especially moving right into the workforce. Utilizing the resume writing services, how to translate some of your military experience into civilian speak so you can capitalize on that on your applications and your job interviews can be pretty critical to you getting the job over a different candidate. We also have a military student lounge, which is located in the top floor of Drake Library. There'll be more information, I'm sure, to come with regard to accessibility, hours, and any restrictions due to COVID, obviously moving forward in the fall semester. And for those, if this is your first orientation session, there's a great piece on the Brockport website about Brockport's return to largely face-to-face learning right at brockport.edu under the COVID section. So be sure to check that out if you haven't already, and that way you can get a good lay of the land for the fall. If you are planning on participating in a ROTC or NROTC program, Brockport does have obviously connections with all 4 major military branches. So if you're planning on going Navy or Marine Corps, there's a program at University of Rochester, about 25 minutes away. If you're planning on commissioning with the U.S. Air Force, we have an affiliate program at RIT, again, about 25 minutes away. And if you're thinking about U.S. Army, we have a host program right on campus in Cooper Hall. These are great programs too to just get some information from and see what the requirements are. A lot of, especially our drilling and reserve members, are interested in continuing their military service through the commissioning process after they graduate. So there's a lot of great benefits to that. Be sure to ask questions and obviously don't sign up for anything that you're not interested in doing, but it never hurts to get some more information. A little bit more on ROTC programs. With regard to scholarships and service obligations, scholarships from ROTC programs vary. Each program may offer different types of scholarships just based on their branch funding. They may affect your current or future obligations, depending on if you've already concluded your prior military service or if you're still serving. They may also have an impact on additional federal and state financial aid, whether it's military aid and or civilian aid, such as federal Pell, New York State TAP, those types of things. They also potentially have an impact on GI Bill or other veterans benefits. In most cases, they don't, but in some unique cases, they can. So be aware that if you're seeking out, for example, 2-, 3-, 4-year scholarships through ROTC, or if you're doing a simultaneous membership program scholarship, a guaranteed Guard Reserve Force duty scholarship, those types of programs that are facilitated directly through the ROTC branch, then they may have some benefit or some detriment with other programs you may concurrently qualify for. With the service obligations post-graduation, though they are pretty typical for what you see with enlisted contracts. If you're going active duty, it's usually 4 years active. It can be typically a little bit longer if you're going into some type of flight status, just because of the length of time training, often 5 or 6 years active duty. If you are going into a Guard or Reserve status, then it might look more like a 4 years drilling status and 4 years inactive status, or usually a 6 years inactive or drilling status and a 2-year inactive status. So each program will offer different benefits and different opportunities in that regard. It also, again, might relate to what branch MOS you're going into for the Army, or MOS for the Marine Corps, rating for the Navy, or your career code for the Air Force. With regard to additional obligations, many of them have some pretty unique opportunities as well. So for example, in the Army program, you can take advantage of professional military training, such as airborne, air assault, mountain warfare training while you're in school. You can also take advantage of the cultural language immersion program, in addition to scholarships themselves. So there's more than just the financial aspect and financial benefits of ROTC. There's also the experiential benefits within the program to take a look at. When it comes to those service members on active duty while they're attending, such as an officer commissioning program, or if you're on a drilling status, whether or not you're participating in ROTC aside. So if you have an active drill obligation from the National Guard or Reserves, then there's a couple important things to be aware of. One, that's the military leave of absence policy for the school, and which largely is a mirror of those for the state. You have both federal, state, and school protections in terms of being able to go on leave for military orders, whether it's for a long duration of time, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, or even just a drill weekend or your summer training. We always do our best to accommodate military schedules that conflict with your academic calendar. So for example, if your unit drills on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday versus a regular Saturday, Sunday, or you're driving across state lines to drill, maybe you're driving 7 or 8 hours. Maybe you have to drill early or late. You know, these are things that we want to take accommodation for when we're helping you schedule classes, so that we can minimize the conflicts where they can be, but also you can be aware and have the opportunity to make up the work that you'll inevitably miss within those classes, even though it's always an excused absence. Same thing with your impact on financial and education benefits. If for some reason, and we've seen this obviously with COVID and a couple other state-based programs before it, but if you're in a National Guard component especially, you are subject to involuntary call-up, even though it's within the state. And in many cases, you won't have the practical ability to continue studies within the scope of the semester that you're already attending. In that case, we have a tuition reimbursement process where we will withdraw you from all classes within the semester if needed, or those that you cannot continue attending. And that way you're not academically penalized and you're not financially penalized for that semester. But again, you do have to go back and make up the work. And there's additional academic policies as well, such as taking incomplete course grades, which can be completed usually within a few months after the semester is done, working with your professors or your faculty to see if there are other requirements you can continue to meet, or if you're already in an online course schedule, to be able, and you have access to the internet, to be able to continue to meet that. So it's very much a one-on-one basis when it comes to some of those things. Keep in mind, military obligations, especially those that you have while you're in school, can potentially impact your time frame to graduation. So if you get called up for orders and you have to attend them, and it's going to take you away from a semester or two, it's inevitably going to have some impact on when you're going to finish your degree. So just be aware of those things. When it comes to active duty commissioning program requirements, one thing to keep in mind is that they're all different. Each branch has certain unique requirements. For example, it's not uncommon for Marine Corps or Navy folks who are trying to do a green to gold program, a MECEP program, or Stage 21 to be required to take courses year round. Even though your academic advisors may say, hey, you don't really need this course, or there isn't anything in the summer that you could benefit by, your orders may say, if you don't take courses in the summer, you're out of compliance. So if that's something that affects you, let us know, and we will help work with you to make the most efficient use of that time. One thing to check with if you're thinking about these programs is if there is continuing to be an SAT or ACT requirement, given that those exams have been kind of put on hiatus for the time being due to COVID. We have not heard anything officially from the armed forces that facilitate these programs, that they're simply no longer requiring those exams. So if you are thinking about these and you do need to take an SAT or ACT, just be aware of that requirement. But Brockport itself doesn't require that for veterans and military. With the Excelsior Scholarship, this won't affect too many of our military or veterans folks, but you do have an opportunity to apply for the quote unquote free tuition for New York State residents at SUNY schools. As you might be aware, with this particular program, there is a residency requirement post-graduation, which obviously is, for many of you may conflict with military service that may be incurred, especially if you're an ROTC graduate, after you graduate. So with that, just be aware that our current understanding from HESC is that regardless of the branch of service or nature of your service, be it full-time on active duty or part-time in a Guard or Reserve component, you will continue to meet the residency requirement regardless of your physical duty station, whether it's within the state of New York, outside the continental US, or in some other US state. So in that regard, you're still meeting the residency requirement, you still technically owe it, but you're meeting it regardless of your physical presence, which in general is a pretty good thing. It's really not going to hamper you in terms of not being able to take Excelsior if future military obligations are something you are interested in. With regard to an overview of some of the actual educational benefits that are going to help you specifically pay your way through college, and in many cases pay you directly to help go to college, we're going to talk about some of those now. With that, keep it just as you see, there's a very disparate nature of all of these different programs. It is very uncommon, even for some of the most beneficial programs out there, that you'll only use a single educational benefit of one type to help fund your education. It's very common for veterans and military personnel and their dependents to also apply for federal and state financial aid, not based on your military service, to apply for scholarships, to apply for grants, to work while you go to school, or have a military obligation while you go to school. All your benefits may not come from the VA. They might come from a state entity or from a campus-based scholarship. So there's no right or wrong way to go about that. With regard to GI Bill benefits specifically, there's a couple different programs that we'll cover. But with GI Bill benefits, these are facilitated through the department or our Veterans Affairs office on campus. Their hours and availability are posted right online, and obviously they're going to be forthcoming for the upcoming semester. It is beneficial when you provide a copy of your DD-214, and also if you have not already done so, apply for your actual benefit. So what a lot of people are unaware of is that you're often told you qualify for certain veterans educational benefits, but you're typically not told, or not told sufficiently, that you actually have to apply to qualify for them. And the way that you do that is just following the link on the screen. And at the conclusion of the presentation, I'm going to get attendees information, and we will actually send you a copy of this presentation that you can use the interactive links within it to follow any of the guidelines. But you do have to apply for VA education benefits and any other VA benefit you're seeking. And prior to every semester, you'll want to just notify our VA office that you're actually choosing to use your benefit. So with regards to doing that, we have a local form right on our website. This is your way of telling us, hey, this is me, I want to use my benefit for the upcoming semester. These are your benefits, not the college's. So we do not make the presumption that merely because you qualify, you are electing to use them. We would definitely love to keep in close contact on what your goals and your desires are for using your benefits towards your educational endeavors, be it undergrad, graduate, doctoral, down the road, etc. But if you don't tell us those things, that's okay. We want to make sure that you have full control over your benefits and also are aware of the responsibilities that come with that. So be sure once you register for classes for the upcoming term, for some of you, you may already be registered. For others, you have yet to sign up for classes. Once you register for classes, that's the earliest we can submit your certification to the Department of Veterans Affairs to get you in the payment processing queue. Obviously, the sooner that takes place relative to the semester beginning, the better. But the VA also has its own payment cycles, which if we get stuff in August, it may or may not really impact when you are going to get paid. With regard to benefits, there's a couple different types, and there's a couple different places on campus that those are facilitated through. So if you're using any VA benefit, being specifically Chapter 33, 30, 1606, 35, and 31, that's post 9/11, the Montgomery GI Bill Active Duty, Montgomery GI Bill Selective Reserve, Dependents and Survivors Assistance Program, or VOC Rehab. You'll be facilitating those benefits through our on-campus VA office. If you're using military tuition assistance through your unit or branch of service, whether that is the New York State RARP program through the National Guard for Naval Militia folks, Army and Air National Guard for New York State, whether it is for active duty or reserve members through your administrative section of your unit, that will actually go applications through your unit or branch of service itself. Many of those have online forms that you can fill out, and then those are processed actually through our Office of Student Accounts. Our HESC awards, being our New York State benefits, Veterans Tuition Award, and Dependents Awards, which we'll also talk about, actually get processed by our Records and Reg Office. So a little bit of a spider web there in terms of where benefits go, all winding up on counting on your student bill, and in many cases paying you directly as well. Just a quick note, you can qualify for multiple forms of benefits all at once, but you cannot get any combination of benefits that are tuition specific by nature that exceed the total amount of tuition you're charged. So for example, if your tuition is $7,200 this year for a full-time student, and you have $10,000 worth of tuition specific benefits, just pulling that number out of a hat, you're not going to get $10,000 worth. You're only going to get the max, and that's $7,200 because that's what you're charged for tuition. That may not apply towards other forms of benefits, like those designed for room and board, those designed for non-tuition specific, which we'll also talk about, but for tuition specifically, you can't get multiple benefits that exceed the total cost. When it comes to New York State benefits, one of the most common is the New York State Veterans Tuition Award. This is a tuition-only award, and it's based on the undergraduate rate. One of the cool things about it is you can actually use it for undergrad or grad school, and I should say undergrad and grad school if you're going from one to the next. There's no time limit on this benefit, so it's not limited by your age. It's not limited by a certain time period after you finished your service. So it is, in essence, as long as you qualify, a lifelong award until you exhaust it or never go back to college. With that, you can get up to 8 full-time or 16 part-time semesters or some combination therein. It is a full tuition award, but again, it's only based on the undergraduate rate. So for example, if you're an undergrad student, it'll pay for your full tuition up to full in-state SUNY tuition. If you're a graduate student, it'll only still pay for full undergraduate in-state tuition. So instead of paying for 100% of your tuition, it'll simply take off a pretty big chunk, but how much that chunk is actually depends on how much you're charged. With this, you can combine it with some federal benefits, and that's pretty cool when you're combining both state-based and also VA-based benefits as well. This is specifically for the veteran or military personnel themselves. This is not for dependents unless those dependents have also incurred their own military service that qualifies. There are certain qualifications for DoD combat campaigns, and those can be found on the HESC website. But in general, if you served in Iraq, Afghanistan, the Middle East in general since 1990, or all the way back to World War I, this benefit is available to you. With regard to probably the smallest benefit we'll come across that's fairly formalized in New York State, this is the New York State Regents Award for children of deceased and disabled veterans. This one is exclusively for children of veterans, be they adoptive or financial dependents or biological. It's only a $450 annual award, so over 4 years, it's only going to be worth about $1,800. And your qualifying parent does have to be a disabled veteran who at the time of their attendance is going to be a New York State resident. And disabled for this purpose is 40% or higher from a VA service-connected disability rating, regardless of what for. Aside from that, again, this is a small, pretty nominal award, but it is a benefit that's out there, so take advantage of it if you qualify or if your children qualify. With regard to the Merit Scholarship, this is a much more comprehensive but also state-based benefit. This program is, again, only for dependents, but it also includes spouses and other financial dependents in addition to children. As long as the service member or veteran is 100% permanently and severely disabled due to their military service per the VA, then you will qualify for this. So it's a pretty high bar. That also includes individuals who are deceased due to their military service. However, this program pays 100% of in-state SUNY tuition. It pays all fees. It pays all room and board costs if the student lives on campus. And it also gives you a stipend, which is fairly small, if they live off campus in lieu of that room and board benefit. It can also be, again, combined with some New York State, or excuse me, federal benefits, which we'll talk about in just a second. This one is a little bit more stringent in terms of qualification. The veteran, parent, or spouse must have been a New York State resident at the time they served, not merely a resident at the time that the student is attending college. So with regard to the federal benefits, post 9/11 is probably among our most common. These days, this is the newest GI Bill dating back to 2009. With this program, it pays a percentage of your tuition and fees up to 100% of mandatory tuition and fees determined by your active duty service time under Title 10 orders. So for those on state-based service or in the National Guard, Title 32 orders, which are state-based, don't count towards this benefit, but any Title 10 orders for the most part do. With this program, it'll pay up to 100% of the benefits for tuition, fees, and it'll also give you a stipend directly for BAH for room and board. Again, the stipend is paid to the student at the rate of an E5 with dependents, but it's irrespective of your rank or dependency status. That's simply where everyone is paid. So if you were a private or a general, it won't matter. Everyone's paid the same in that regard. However, it's also based on your percentage of qualification for the program, the location of the coursework that you're pursuing, and your overall rate of pursuit. So what does all that mean? At Brockport, if you were a full-time face-to-face or residential student primarily, you're going to get and you're 100% eligible for the program, you're going to get roughly around $1,500 plus per month from the Department of Veterans Affairs for housing and other assistance. If you live on campus, that'll eat up a pretty good chunk of your total cost. If you live off campus, it'll do pretty well to sustain you for the cost of living in the Brockport or Greater Rochester area on its own. With that is obviously a tax-exempt veterans educational benefit. There are no income taxes paid on that, but keep in mind that the benefit is temporary. So you will only be able to receive that benefit while you're registered for classes and attending them, and additionally when you choose to use the benefit. If you choose not to use any of your benefits for be it state or federal, you won't use the benefit time, but you also won't receive payment under the respective program. What that means in a practical sense for the regular academic year, you only attend about 9 months out of the 12-month calendar year. So on a financial planning purpose, you're only going to get about 3/4 of the year covered with benefit payments directly to you, even though we all know our bills are going to come 12 months out of the year. So make sure you're planning on that when you're balancing your budget for attending school. This program also pays a books and supplies stipend to the student, and it's based on $41.67 per credit hour. So if you are taking, for example, 12 credit hours in the spring or in the fall, it's going to pay you roughly $500. If you're taking another 12 in the spring, it'll pay you roughly another $500. If you're taking a regular course load around 15, 16 credit hours in the fall, however, they're going to pay you at that $41 rate, and they're going to pay you about $625, give or take, dollars. And that means in the spring, you won't get another $625 payment if you register for the same amount of credits. They'll actually give you the difference of what you are owed annually. $1,000 is the maximum, and what you were paid in the fall, in this case $625. So now you got a huge payment in the fall and a smaller payment of about $375 in the spring in that example. My recommendation is any money you have that you have not spent on books and supplies in the fall semester, just bank it until the spring, because when you run into those semesters where the professor wrote the book and you've got 5 of those and the book is hot off the press and it's only in the college bookstore and it's $150 a pop, it can help you eliminate some of the sticker shock by having some of that cash on hand to pay for it. In most cases, just because of the timing of the benefits, the books and supply stipend almost always behaves as a reimbursement rather than an upfront payment for you to buy books and supplies in advance. So make sure you're planning on that as well. Meet obviously with your professors, look on the College Bookstore website, see what books and materials are required, see what are recommended. If you're going to keep the classes by the end of your first week, then obviously you want to start acquiring those materials if you have not done so already. That being said, the books and supplies stipend is payable immediately as soon as the VA processes your benefit once you've started the semester. With your BAH stipend, however, and this is typical for all of the remaining federal benefits we'll talk about, the payment cycles for those are based monthly in arrears. So if you've served in the military, obviously, you are used to getting paid on the 1st and the 15th of every month for the prior 2 weeks of your service. With VA benefits, be it disability, enhanced pension, or vet education benefits, you'll only be paid on the 1st of the following month. So for example, when we start classes on August 31st, you'll get your first full payment, not on September 1st for 1 day, but on October the 1st for all of September and the 1 day in August that you'll actually be in attendance. And it'll be a similar circumstance for the spring term as well. You'll get paid on the 1st of March for all of February and the few days in January that you'll attend. And from there, you'll be paid every month on the 1st of the following month. When it comes to additional dependency benefits, Chapter 33 obviously has a transfer component to it. If you are still in the service or have already initiated a transfer, you can do that only so long as you are still under a military obligation and with approval from your respective DoD service branch. If you have retired or separated or have yet to start your military service and don't qualify for that benefit yet, you won't be able to initiate that transfer until such time that you do. With regard to Chapter 35, This is purely a dependency benefit. It's not available to the veteran themselves unless the veteran obviously is also a qualifying dependent. With the Chapter 35 benefit, it's the Dependents and Survivors Assistance Program. This pays, like most of the other VA benefits, a one-time direct stipend to the student. So with this, the idea is that you'll register for classes, you'll be charged for classes, you'll have to pay the school, and then the VA will simply pay you on a monthly basis, and you can either reimburse the school through a payment plan, for example, with this type of benefit. This is based on a 100% service-connected disabled veteran through the VA as a qualifying parent or spouse. It pays a monthly stipend, which is roughly almost $1,100 this year, and that will be can be deferred for up to 3 months on a payment deferral plan. Typically, with this benefit, you can combine this one as well as Chapter 33 for that housing benefit with most of those New York State programs that we talked about earlier. If you are a prior active duty service member that qualifies for 100% post 9/11 or for VOC rehab, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, applying for additional state-based aid is not going to help you very much just because the VA is the last payer. You're simply going to save one governmental agency money at the expense of the other with no net benefit to yourself other than wasting 20 minutes of your time applying for some of those. So if you have questions on what benefits you should apply for, which ones you might qualify for, when is the most effective time to use one versus the other if you qualify for multiple, we can definitely give you specific advice on those things, obviously contingent on your specific academic plans. With regard to Chapter 30 in the Montgomery GI Bill, so if you've served on active duty in the past or have done so in the recent past, you may or may not have been prompted to pay $1,200 in your first year of service. For many folks, they're unaware if they've done so just by nature of all the paperwork they had to sign at basic training. For many, you're very aware of the fact that you've bought into this program. With this program, it pays, again, a monthly stipend. Right now, it's about $1,800 per month. And with that, there's an additional $100.50 kicker program if you paid an additional $600 top up into this program explicitly outside of the actual initial contribution. With this, you can do the same bill deferral program that was talked about with Chapter 35. So if you're receiving this on a monthly basis and you do plan on using it to pay your college expenses directly, set up a bill plan with the school, and they can actually wait, obviously, for you to get your benefits so you can reimburse the school while you receive them. You do have to start certifying your attendance under this program. It's pretty simple and easy. Once a month, you just have to verify in an online form that you're still attending and you haven't dropped out of classes. This benefit and the next one we'll talk about are going to require the only things that require typically some type of ongoing enrollment verification. You can also use this in conjunction with other tuition-specific awards. So if you qualify for that Veterans Tuition Award that we talked about from the state, and you're using your Chapter 30 benefit, that's a great way to help maximize multiple benefits to help you cover your cost of attendance. If you're currently in a drilling status in the Reserve or National Guard component, you have access to the Chapter 1606 Montgomery GI Bill Selected Reserve benefit. This pays a very small amount, roughly around $360 or so per month, so about $1,600 per semester. So it's not a whole lot compared to some of the other ones, but it is certainly a valuable benefit when you're combining it with other programs. And it's the same thing. You have to sign your verification of attendance every month. You do have to be in good standing with a unit and in a drilling status. So if you're not obligated to drill, like in the inactive ready reserve, for example, if you are not under contract, or if you're relinquishing a contract, for example, to go into an ROTC program, if that's required of you, then at that point you may no longer qualify for this particular benefit. The only other restriction that is DoD specific is regarding this program, and that's that you cannot use Chapter 1606 Montgomery GI Bill, which is a VA benefit, in conjunction with federal tuition assistance from your service branch for the same classes at the same time. So if you're using 1606, usually it's an evaluation of which one is more effective financially for you to use. Is it your federal TA? Is it your GI Bill benefit? And we can help you calculate those things based on all the different financial aspects that you're going to rely on. With regard to VOC Rehab, this program is not an educational benefit per se. It is a job retraining program with an education component, is the way the VA puts it. You do have to be a service-connected disabled veteran of at least 20% or higher, regardless of what for. You can meet one-on-one with a VOC Rehab counselor. You apply for this benefit much the same as you do with the other ones. However, the idea here being that the VA will retrain you based on your service-connected disabilities to go into a new career field that will, one, not exacerbate your existing service-connected disabilities. The easiest example I can give you is if you have physical ailments with your back, for example, the VA is not going to retrain you to be a construction guy with a jackhammer. Clearly, it's not a good fit. And those things will be unique to you. Not only that, but it has to be the minimum level of employable skill. So if your field of instruction requires a minimum of an associate's degree, they're only going to train you usually up to an associate's. If it's a bachelor's, they'll train you up to a bachelor's. In some limited cases, it can also be up to and including a master's degree. Very rarely what have I ever seen individuals qualify for professional schooling, such as medical school, law school, dental school, those types of very lengthy and expensive programs, because this program is 100% taxpayer funded, so they do try and shepherd funds under who gets approval for these. But in some cases, like social work is a great example, the minimum requirement in New York is a master's. So in many cases, if you're interested in becoming a social worker, they'll pay up through and including a master's degree, at least based on recent experience. With this, it behaves very much just like Chapter 33, Post 9/11 at 100%. It'll pretty much pay for all your tuition, all your fees, including some fees that other benefits don't cover, like all your books and supplies rather than giving you a payment. Your parking pass even will be covered under these. So this is a pretty comprehensive benefit. It also does not concurrently utilize any time you qualify under other benefits. So if you qualify for Post 9/11, for example, and you're using Chapter 31 for your bachelor's degree, but you would like to save your GI Bill benefit for a graduate program that maybe Chapter 31 won't touch, that's a great way to maximize the value of both of those benefits in the time frame that you have to train. Here's a bunch of contact information for both myself, Deidre Strutz, who is our VA certifying official on campus if you're using VA benefits specifically, and Tom Chu, our Academic Success Center director, who will be interacting with you quite frequently in your studies through the ASC. With these, again, I'm going to send everybody a copy of this PowerPoint presentation. So I hope you've had the chance to take some notes as well. I know this covers a lot of information really fast. Don't hesitate to reach out to me directly, and I'd be happy to talk with anything that affects you specifically, especially while we have the time to do so well before the semester starts. With that, I'm actually going to close the presentation, but not the session. And that way I can see if we have any questions in the chat. And from there, we can address those if there are any.
All right, there are no questions.
Awesome. So if there are no questions, I'm going to thank everybody for attending that did. And I will hopefully see you around campus soon. And thank you very much, Cliff. I'll turn it back over to you if you wanted to end the session and head to your next one.
Yeah, so thank you everyone who attended this session. One more plug in for the feedback form. It is in the announcements and the Q&A. So if you have some time, please feel free to provide us some opinions regarding how this session went. And also a quick reminder that this is a live session and is only supplemental to your experience. Your required online modules, which is due in 10 days, was sent to your Brockport email. Thank you all for joining us and have a great and safe summer.
Awesome. Thank you.